Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing today?
Good morning.
Good. My name is Tahara Alexander, and I'm the Empowerment Program Director for Families Helping Families of Greater Baton Rouge. The director, Ms. Dr. Marilyn Thornton, would also like to thank you all for joining us today. Families Helping Families is a family-oriented nonprofit resource center for individuals with disabilities and their families. Our mission is to provide the individualized services, information, and support that is required to positively enhance the independence, productivity, and integration of individuals with disabilities. The Parents and Caregivers Virtual Network Meeting will be November 19th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Remember to save the date on April 26, 2025 for our Active for Autism 5K Run and Walk. FunFest 2025 at the Pennington Biomedical Research Center at 6400 Perkins Road in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70808 from 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. During today's training, we will discuss trauma-informed care, which will be presented by Mrs. Tameka Jasmine, the TRBI trainer and coach of Crossroads. Mrs. Jasmine is a licensed clinical social worker who currently serves as trust-based relational intervention trainer and coach of Crossroads, Louisiana, advocating and supporting marginalized youth. That has been a passion that has taken Tameka on an ever-evolving journey. Her professional experience includes over 15 years of serving children, youth, and families in various capacities, including schools, hospitals, and managed care. Prior to joining Crossroads, Tameka served as one of the first school-based mental health professionals of St. Charles Parish Public Schools, led R.K. Smith Middle School's Social Emotional Wellness Program, and was an instrumental member of the district's Social Emotional Wellness team. After being introduced to TRBI in 2019, Ms. Tameka inevitably became a TRBI practitioner in 2020. Let us please welcome Ms. Tameka Jasmine. And please be advised that the presentation will be muted to all participants who are joining us by webinar. However, there will be a time for questions and answers at the end, and all attendees will have control of the mic. Again, we appreciate you and we thank you for joining. Now let's welcome Ms. Jasmine.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander.
You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. So one of the ways we like to open up the trainings is finding out who is in the room. So I know we have a few people online. I know we have some in person. Can you tell me like what it is, like where you're from, what sector you represent, whether it's parent, whether it's case manager, social worker, caregiver, foster parent, student? I'd like to just get an idea of, everybody. Yeah, you can, so where?
Hi, I'm Jamie Roth.
Okay.
I'm a nurse practitioner. I work at a federally qualified health center here. In fact, right down the street, we have a clinic, a women and children's clinic. And I'm coming to, I want to find out more about this training and this information because I think it's something that I might want to bring to our staff.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I'm Diana. I'm the primary clinician at a women and children's substance abuse halfway house.
Okay,
It's like transitional housing.
Mhm.
Okay,
thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna. I'm client at City House.
Okay,
Nice to meet you.
all right. What about, I know what you do, and I know what you do. And you,
No.
Participant,
parent?
parent.
Thank you. I'm very glad you guys are here and I'm excited to share this information with you guys. So it's important to keep in mind that throughout this presentation, this is the content of TBRI is what we as trainers deliver to you guys. But as the experts in your setting, it is up to you how you choose to apply this information. Our goal in presenting this information is to make sure that you understand trauma and how it influences the development of the brain. Trauma and traumatic experiences, stressful events can alter how the brain develops and forms, which ultimately impacts a child or adult's behavior and ability to emotionally regulate. Right, trying to change the. Okay, perfect. All right, so what is TBRI? That is the question that people often wonder. They've heard about TBRI, they know that it relates to trauma, but what is it? So TBRI stands for Trust-Based Relational Intervention. And it is an intervention model that addresses all types of behaviors. And it's been found to be successful when other treatment options have been unsuccessful. It is attachment-based. It's grounded in relationship and good morning, welcome. It's grounded in a relational model and grounded in attachment theory. TBRI is also evidence-based. What that means is they've done tons of research, and the research has been done for over 20 years, and they've successfully implemented TBRI in schools, residential settings, in homes with caregivers, with homes with caregivers of foster children, a number of areas that they've been successful in implementing this practice. TBRI focuses on the whole child. So what does that mean when we say the whole child? What it means is we don't just look at the behavior. TBRI looks at what is going on. It's like, what is the need behind the behavior? Not just why they're behaving a certain way, but what is it that's causing them to behave that way? TBRI is trauma-informed. So people hear a lot about trauma-informed care, trauma-informed practices. Trauma-informed simply means it's connection, relationship built. It's grounded in felt safety, and it focuses on self-regulation. I'll explain that further, all of those things the further we get into today's presentation. And TBRI, lastly, is a journey. So when we say a journey, we mean you're not going to get this information one time and then expect miraculous changes overnight. That's not being real. We understand that TBRI takes work, and it takes a commitment to do the work and to stick with it in order to see results in the outcomes of behavioral changes. I don't think it's going to switch with the camera on. Okay, perfect. Okay. So, so before we get any further, what is very important to understand is risk factors that can affect the way the brain develops. So when we look at risk factors, I can't see. Yeah. All right. when we see the risk factors, the first risk factor that's listed is difficult pregnancy. So when you think of difficult pregnancy, what is that? What comes to mind when you see that difficult pregnancy? What do you think of when you think of difficult pregnancy? What could that possibly mean?
Well, medical condition like pregnancy-induced hypertension, diabetes.
Yes. I love having a nurse in a room.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Difficult pregnancy could definitely be, like she mentioned, hypertension during the pregnancy, diabetes diabetes during pregnancy. It could be any type of high risk pregnancy. Bed rest could be considered difficult pregnancy.
Multiple gestation.
Yes, yes. So when you think of all of this, consider stress, okay? Stress is a very important factor when you're considering difficult pregnancy. So if you're, let's say, pregnant and you're in a domestic violence situation, or you have any of those health concerns, that stress produces a hormone called cortisol. And what cortisol does, that's stress hormone, it can pass from mother to baby through the placenta. So they found that when baby's urine, newborn baby's urine was tested, that there are high levels of cortisol. Babies are born with that when parents have been parents were stressed during pregnancy. So when next risk factor, we see difficult birth. When you think of difficult birth, what comes to mind? Difficult birth.
Premature.
Born premature.
Or you could have placenta previa or something like that, condition that happens at the time of birth.
Yes, or something that causes you to have an emergency C-section.
Right.
Exactly. That would be, difficult birth, baby being breached or born with a umbilical cord wrapped around its neck. All of those are stress-inducing situations. Same thing happens. That is considered a risk factor to how the brain is altered. Early hospitalization. So what comes to mind with early hospitalization?
Preeclampsia.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, preeclampsia. So this could be early hospitalization for mom or baby.
Yeah.
So let's think of baby in a sense. Early hospitalization, if a baby is born, let's say premature due to some of these health concerns or something that caused maybe an accident that the baby had to be born immediately. Think about the first experiences that child has. Think about when a child who goes full term and they're born. What are their first experiences? Baby's born, full term. Typically, in optimal situations, that baby is handed to the mother. And that baby, after it's cleaned off, the mother gets to hold the baby. A lot of hospitals promote skin-to-skin contact. During that time, a lot of things are happening to that baby. That baby is being regulated externally by the mom. After coming out through that stressful situation, the baby is being calmed. The baby is being touched, nurtured, maybe talked to, oohed and eyed over. So now think of an early hospitalization in terms of maybe a premature baby. Think about that experience. That experience is significantly different than a baby who's born full term and have like a normal birth. So if the baby's born premature, depending on how premature that baby's born, their first experiences are not the same. Their first experiences are maybe being immediately taken from mom and poked and prodded with needles. Their first experiences are not nurturing and warm. Their first experiences are often painful. So again, pain registers as like the brain is like dysregulating, and that's the brain is also processing during that time. All of that developed, those connections are being formed as early as birth. System effects. When we think of system effects, what comes to mind? System. When you hear the word system.
Healthcare system.
Healthcare, yeah. System, when you think of risk factors, you think of a system, what else could come to mind?
About the family system.
The family system, yeah. System effects. Think of school systems. Think of foster care system, judicial system, court system. A lot of these systems are designed to be a benefit to the person that it's serving. Foster care, if a child has to be removed from the home, the idea is to take care of that child until they can go back. That's the whole idea. But sometimes a child ends up not often being placed in a setting that's most appropriate for them. Do y'all think that that is helpful to the child, or could also be traumatic, having to move from place to place?
It's very traumatic.
So the system, again, which is designed to be helpful, can sometimes have the opposite effect in a case like that. Abuse, neglect. Abuse, most of us know what abuse is. It can be physical, sexual, emotional, verbal. Again, all have a lot to do. I mean, all can change how the brain is wired. Neglect. People often dismiss neglect and say, oh, they're okay. They weren't abused. They weren't beaten or anything. They were just neglected. But what research has found is that neglect is one of the most harmful forms of abuse. And the reason is because of the message that it sends. The message that neglect sends is that it communicates that they don't matter. The child doesn't matter, or even adults. They don't matter. They don't have a voice. They don't exist. They're not worthy. That is, the person is growing and developing with that belief system. And that can affect relationships, that can affect life. Trauma. So trauma is an experience that can alter the way you see and view the world, depending on how you process that trauma. What could be traumatic to me may not be traumatic to you. We can have the same experience. Let's say we get in a car accident. We're all on a bus together and we get in a traumatic accident, bus flips. We're okay. But some people will be like, I am never getting on a bus ever in my life again. While another person will be like, we made it, praise God. Yes. So very different experiences could shape and mold the way you view the world. And also your brain processes that, how it affects you and ultimately how you view the world. One big thing that we talk about in trauma is the relationship trauma has when it's involved in attachment. So when you are impacted by trauma in the context of relationships, what the founders of TRBI says is your trauma can only be healed through relationships. So they call that relational trauma. What happens when you have a traumatic relational experience, it can only be healed through relationship. So unlikely the person who's caused the trauma, but relationships can be healing. And that is what TRBI is built on. Relationships and connection, and how that promotes healing, and healing ultimately promotes change behaviors and emotional regulation. So we're going to do a quick activity on relational trauma. So does everyone have their brains? Okay. So in this exercise, I want you to think of a person, whether it's a child or an adult, because TRBI is not just for children. TRBI is a relational model. Think of this person, and I want you to keep this person in mind as we go through this activity. Think of someone that you consider a challenge, somebody that is that you've tried and you don't know how to work with this person because it's been a challenge. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a caregiver, a case manager, social worker, think of a child or an adult who you've tried and you found that consistently this has been a little bit challenging. So keep that person in mind. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through this list, and every time I say a word, I want you to make a little X mark on the brain. So you see, you have your brains? Got everybody have something to write with? Make a little X mark on the brain when I say a word that you believe that this person that you keeping in mind has experienced. Okay? Y'all got that?
Yes.
Did I explain it? You get it? Let me,
Person that has caused you trauma or yourself?
no. I want you to think of a person that is that is challenging, or a person that you've tried to help but you've struggled with. And I want you to consider their experiences. And every time I name an experience that you think that they have experienced or you know that they've experienced, write a little X mark on the brain. You can write it all over the brain. It don't have to be at a certain spot. Okay, I'm just gonna read the words on the list. So I'm gonna go through the list fast because of time. Maltreatment. Has this person experienced maltreatment? Abuse. One X each word I say. Assault. Interpersonal violence. That's violence in a relationship. Family physical abuse. Family sexual abuse. Family emotional abuse. Incest. Community-based assault. Peer-based assault. School-based assault. Molestation. Severe bullying. Physical neglect. Medical neglect. Emotional neglect. Witnessing domestic violence. Disruptions in caregiving as a result of caregiver mental illness, caregiver substance abuse, caregiver criminal involvement, or caregiver abrupt separation. Now, separation could be due to death, it could be due to loss, it could be due to removal from home, just any abrupt separation. So, looking at the list and thinking about this person, if y'all are familiar, a lot of these relational traumas examples they model the ACEs. Anyone ever heard of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences? And what they found with ACEs is if you have so many of these adverse childhood experiences, it can affect your health due to long-term chronic stress. So a lot of these are related. So does anyone have 10 or more? Okay. Anyone have more than 10? So when you think about your person that you kept in mind, these experiences have put a mark on how their brain is wired and how they view the world. These experiences have shaped, good morning, have shaped how they process life experiences. So our next slide focuses on the 5 B's. So when you look at this example, this image on the screen, what do you notice about this image? What do you see? What do you see? Like what stands out about this image?
most of the, I guess it's, what is that, like a ice?
It's iceberg.
Okay, most of it is under the water.
Yeah, most of it's under the water. Anything else y'all notice? So what sticks out in this image is the behaviors. And the reality is that's what we see when we're dealing with challenging children or adults. We see their behavior. We often don't consider what all is going on underneath those behaviors. We focus on what it is that we can see. And that's, I mean, and the reality is that's what you're faced with, those behaviors. TBRI calls you to focus on what is underneath the behavior. What is the need behind the behavior? So we take a look at the brain. In TBRI, we consider the brain, the biology, the body, and the belief system, because all of that goes into the person that's in front of you. All of that should be taken into consideration. And again, as I mentioned earlier, because TBRI looks at the whole person, that's what distinguishes TBRI interventions from other interventions. Other interventions often focus solely on the behavior rather than what else could be going on and trying to rectify or intervene with the other things that are underneath the behavior. So let's start with the brain. We talked a lot about risk factors and we understand at this point how trauma or those early risk factors can have an impact on the brain and how the brain is wired. So if you look at this image right here, you have two brains. We have a brain on the left, your right, your left. Yeah, brain on the left side. And then we also have a brain on the right. The color indicates activity, okay? The most activity is the most colorful. So I'm going to explain what the differences are between the two brains, and then I want you to tell me what you notice. So the brain on the left is the brain, they're both brains of 6-year-old children. The brain on the left is a child who's had minimal trauma, minimal neglect, had maybe the optimal setting, optimal caregiving experience. However, the brain on the right is a brain that has of a child who has been neglected or abused consistently. So what are some things that you notice concerning the differences in the brain?
The brain activity.
The brain activity. You see more activity on the brain on the left side than the brain on the right side. What else?
It looked like there's no continuation. It looked like it's gaps or holes in the bone.
Yes, there are definitely gaps in the brain. So where these circles are, these are the areas where those synapses or brain wiring, neurological things are created through relationships. So when you think about the gaps that are here in comparison, people don't often consider, let's take schools for example, when they're developing plans for kids, they often develop these plans based off of this brain on the left. This is a brain that pretty much can understand and follow through with activities. Now, when you think about this brain on the right-hand side, because of these gaps, there are going to be significant differences in how this child receives information and responds to information that's being given to them. There's going to be significant differences in what the behaviors look like, completely different. And a lot of times people think that the child or adult with this brain is unable to do, is unable or is being willfully disobedient and refusing to do certain things, but oftentimes they can't get themselves to a place where they can follow through with what they're being asked to do, especially if they're dysregulated. So it's not always that they won't do something, it's that they can't do it because they lack the spaces.
Goes through this medication help with that,
So
because my son is going through that and they have put him on medication and have diagnosed him with ODD.
So we're actually going to get into that, but TBRI, what they found is like, I would say a catalyst or the changing point when medication and regular trauma-based therapies do not work. Adding TBRI to that makes a dramatic difference in things. This is relationship. It's more than that, but these parts where the temporal lobes are, this is formed an attachment. So the good thing about TBRI is that we are a healing approach. So even though some of this information is like, it resonates, and then you can reflect on why and how things come to be, there's hope. And TBRI speaks to that hope. That's what all of these strategies that I'm getting to are gonna help you fill in some of these gaps. So this can be filled in through relationships. Relationships can help fill in some of those gaps.
I'm glad you brought up the point about the school system and how when they're making plans, they're only looking at one child to make that plan.
Yeah.
When that no kid is the same.
Yeah.
And so being able to adapt and have teachers who actually get trained for those gaps.
I feel the same. I think everybody should be trained to TBRI.
Yes.
All right. So that was the brain. So now you guys understand a little bit about the brain. We're going to talk more about the brain in a little bit, but I want to talk about biology. When you look at the 5 Bs, when we speak about biology, it's how the brain influences, the changes in the brain influences the biology. And an example I like to use that helps people grasp and connect the concept is the example of a study that they did with mice. Has anyone ever heard the term epigenetics? Epigenetics, I'm going to explain it. It's okay if you haven't. So epigenetics, the simple way of understanding epigenetics is understanding that genes are processed in a certain way, and when you have an experience, it can affect how the genes are processed or expressed in your offspring, in their offspring. An example of that is a study that they did on mice. Now you can research, there is a ton of studies that they've done on mice, but this one in particular is the one that that I like to use in this example. It's called fearful associations. So the fearful association mouse study, what they did, they took a mouse and they let it free in the little, I guess, observation area. And they would have a scent. They would spray a scent, and immediately following that scent, they would shock the mouse. That happened time and time again on, let's call this mouse A. Okay, so mouse A had offspring, and we'll call one of mouse A's offspring mouse B. So mouse B was in the observation area. Same thing happened, except that when they sprayed the scent, they did not attach a shock to it, no pain associated with it. However, mouse B responded with pain based off of, I guess, mouse's A's experience, because that epigenetic genes were passed down that communicated fear-based behaviors based off of an experience. So same thing happened with Mouse B's offspring, which was Mouse C. So that is the example of biology. Another example of how trauma, it's the same in adults. I mean, it's the same in humans. Another example of how the biology is impacted is through our senses. Sensory experiences are altered like as early as prenatally. Trauma prenatally can change how a child processes the world. A lot of people think when they think of sensory experience, they think about children with autism, but we all have sensory needs. Some people bring jackets with them, wear long sleeves because they know that they're going to be cold. That's your senses.
Some has a processing
A
sensory.
sensory processing disorder, yeah. So yeah, and it doesn't sound like he has autism, but he does have.
He's on the
spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can have sensory processing disorder and not have autism as well, based off of your early prenatal experiences or early developmental experiences. So with the biology, so we talk about senses, so it affects senses. It also influences epigenetics. And another way that biology is influenced is behavior. You can see how, when you think of, for people who've worked with the system, been in the system, you can see, depending on the system, a lot of parents have children who struggle with the same thing that they struggle with. And those parents had parents who struggle with some of the same things. But that is another way biology is influenced. We train in courts a lot in Orleans Parish, and every time I present, someone will say, yeah, I had the grandmother in the system, I had the daughter in the system, I had their child in the system, and now the youngest is in the juvenile system. It's based off of a history without intervention. So healing is what TBRI speaks to. We promote healing, and this, regardless of what the history was, it can be changed. And we believe that, and that's what we train.
I retired when clients that I had worked with for years started bringing me their babies. I knew it was time to go. I said, I must not have done my work because now they're bringing their babies.
Yeah.
So
What do you do?
I'm a clinical social worker.
Me too. Well, I'm a trainer now. That's my background.
Mhm.
Okay. Body. So the body is influenced through the senses. I kind of got into biology and senses and belief system. Do y'all remember when I mentioned with the early risk factors, belief systems? What is communicated early on, a child believes that, and they grow up believing that this is who they are. If it's communicated they don't matter, that's how they operate, like they don't exist. It affects their self-esteem, self-worth. So keep those in mind. So we're going to go back to the brain again. So we talked a lot about the brain and how trauma and early risk factors can influence the brain, but now I want to focus on how the brain works. And I do that through the hand model of the brain. Okay, so I would like, if you are comfortable, just hold up one hand. We're going to do the hand model of the brain. Okay, if you point here, we're going to think of this as the brain stem. So think of the back of the neck, spine. The brain stem is responsible for the involuntary responses like breathing, blinking, things like that. All right. Now your thumb, we're going to take your thumb and fold it to the middle of the hand. So we're moving up. So this is the back of the brain now, the thumb. The thumb represents the amygdala. The amygdala is responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze response. This is what people consider the survival brain. If y'all remember the picture that I showed y'all with the two brains, the one on the left, the one on the right, the one on the right, the brain that was exposed to trauma and neglect, the base of the brain, the amygdala, did y'all notice had the most color? The base of the brain, I can bring it back just so y'all can see it. See what I'm talking about? See, this is where the most activity was. So that child spent most of their time here in the amygdala. So they are operating pretty much in a hypervigilant, chronically stressed state, as evidenced by how much activity is going on here. And the most activity for the child with the normal development is where I'm about to explain to you, the prefrontal cortex. So again, fight, flight, or freeze. This is how you protect yourself. So if you fold, take your hand, fold it over your thumb like this. This is what is called the prefrontal cortex. That's this part of the brain, or this part of the forehead. What's behind here is the part of your brain that's responsible for logic, reasoning, problem solving, making good decisions, emotional regulation, being able to regulate your behavior. So what happens when, go back to the brain model. Let's say we're sitting in this room and all of a sudden we see the lights go out and then we're hearing like a loud noise, something like a big bear growling coming this way. And then we see the bear in the window and the bear trying to get in the room. So which part of the brain you think gonna be in control? You think this part where you're thinking clearly, where you're trying to figure out what type of bear is that? Like here, like, are you gonna be there? Or do you think your amygdala is gonna flip your lid and take control, and you're gonna be thinking of how you gonna keep yourself safe? So when you are here, or when a child, think about a child or an adult who often is dysregulated. When you spend most of your time in this state, it is easy to go back to this state when you're faced with a challenge. If something don't go your way, if you didn't get that piece of candy that you wanted, if they told you you had to wait a day to get something as an adult, or if you're operating mostly here, this is your survival. This is where you automatically go to all the time because this is what you've learned. And we're going to get a little bit deeper into that shortly. When you spend most of the time here, when you have like the optimal situation, you learn how to problem solve. You learn how to make connections and make good decisions. But when you're here most of the time, this is your go-to. So imagine being in that state for most of the time. And it's hard. It's hard to deal with. And imagine what the behaviors can look like if you're constantly here. So this is not just fear. They say fear-based, but it can be if you're angry about something. It can be if you're anxious about something. Any of those emotions, those strong emotions, any of those things that can alter the way you focus will keep you here. So keep those things in mind as we continue to go through the presentation. Oh, I'm clicking the wrong computer. Okay, so TRBI calls us to have a mindset shift. So if you look at this image on the screen, the left side represents the traditional mindset. Okay, when we as adults interpret behaviors, we think that child just bad. They don't know how to act. They don't listen. When you know better, do better. Okay? And we react based off of how we believe that child knows better and can do better. But with TRBI, when you now know that there's differences in the brain and those behaviors are often survival behaviors because that's what they've learned, that's how they've made their connections and how they got their needs met, we look at it differently. Instead of looking at it as being the child just bad and being willfully disobedient, we look at survival behaviors. We consider it survival behaviors, and then we, in TBRI, we think, what is it that we can do to help this person? How can we help meet this need? What is the need behind the behavior? Ask. Which,
It's also environmental,
oh, yes.
because
Yes.
I've experienced some behaviors with my kids in a different environment. And it's more of their like, I guess it would be survival behavior or it's
Different environment, different behaviors.
So when they're like at home in their comfort zone, it's completely different, like they listen and everything.
Yeah, I think it could have an effect. And also who they're with could affect too. Yes, it could be. It could definitely have an influence, especially if a child goes back and forth too. All right.
What about the protective behavior, like being
Protective behavior?
like him worrying about like protecting because of our situation? It's having to survive.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. Yeah. So I know, as I mentioned, trauma-informed care. Y'all have probably heard this terminology a whole lot. But what is trauma-informed care? Trauma-informed care is built on 3 pillars. And CBRI is also founded on these 3 pillars. Felt safety, connection, and self-regulation. So the first pillar, felt safety. When you think felt safety, we know what safety is, right? Y'all feel safe in here? Okay, most of us. So what is felt safety? When you think of felt safety, what does that mean? What does felt safety mean? What is felt safety?
Something you feel.
Something you feel. Yes. Very good. Yes. When you actually feel safe, there's a difference between knowing that you're safe and actually feeling safe. So in our experiences as a trainer, we hear so many stories. There was this story that sat with me and still sticks with me, and I retell it over and over again just because it's like, wow. I'll share it with you, and I'll be quick for the sake of time. There was a child, and we work statewide, so I'm not going to say what area of Louisiana it's in. There was a child who had 3 siblings, ages 8 and under. I think it was maybe an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And the little boys lived with mother who was a substance user, and she slept a lot and didn't really watch the kids. What happened, the kids used to go in the neighborhood pulling on door handles and rummaging through people's cars and taking stuff. The kids one day pulled the door handle and a bunch of pit bulls got out the car and attacked the littlest one. Okay, so child got removed. All 3 kids were removed from mother's care, placed different places. The youngest child survived, hospitalized. When he got out of the hospital, he was placed in a foster home that had a service dog. A service dog. Now, we all know that service dogs are trained. They won't hurt anyone. They're safe generally. But does that baby know that? No. It's a dog. I just got mauled by dogs, almost died. And you put me in a home with a dog? Like, who arranged that? I don't know. But that happened. So do you think that child felt safe? Do you think that kid, that baby, had felt safety? No. That baby did not have felt safety. So that was a big issue. They fixed it. But some people, when you don't think about these things, you don't consider these things. Connection. TBRI is built on these things. You cannot have you can't go any further with TBRI without relationship. It is vital to have emotional connections or be in relationship with somebody, because the connection is what sets TBRI apart from every other intervention model. And self-regulation. We're going to talk a little bit about self-regulation. Self-regulation is to be able to be in control of your emotions and be able to calm yourself down when you're dysregulated by yourself. So we're first going to talk about connecting. Those 3 pillars that I just mentioned are all a part of the connecting part of TBRI. This is the foundational principle of TBRI, and we're going to get into some strategies, mindfulness strategies and engagement strategies. First, we're going to talk about the attachment cycle. So when I first learned about the attachment cycle, I didn't understand it. I didn't actually understand it until I became a practitioner, where I was able to learn more about it and train it myself. So I thought the easy way to help me understand it, and I have props. So that's what these props are for. So I'm getting ready to explain what the attachment cycle is and how it affects relationships, okay? So if you look at this image, let's imagine it like a clock. The top is a 12 o'clock spot, and it says need expressed. The bottom is the 6 o'clock spot, need met, okay? To the 3 o'clock spot is distress. The 9 o'clock spot is comfort. So need expressed, let's start there. So we have a baby. Who would like to name my baby? Or your baby? This will be your baby. Let's name the baby. Any name. It could be boy or girl. What is it?
Lila.
Lila. This is baby Lila. Okay? So how does baby Lila express when she has a need? She cries. Okay. So 12 o'clock spot. Need expressed. So baby Lila is crying. What do you think is wrong with baby Lila? What could possibly be wrong with baby Lila? Hungry, wet, sleepy, sick. It could be any of those things. So since hunger was said first, so baby Lila crying, she's hungry. What is, in an optimal setting, what does a caregiver do when their baby's hungry? Feed the baby, yes. Gets a bottle, cuddles the baby, talks to her, and it don't have to be the mom, it could be any caregiver. Feed the baby as long as the baby's getting it. Feed the baby, comfort the baby, burp the baby. Then she put baby Lila down. So when baby Lila expressed that need, she was in distress. That's what the 3 o'clock spot is. So in the time of distress, this says sympathetic nervous system and excitatory neurotransmitters. I'll simplify that for y'all. What is happening is the baby's lid is flipped. When she's crying, her amygdala has taken over. She has a need and it needs to be met. So what happens when the amygdala is going on with the baby? So excitatory neurotransmitters mean the baby, it's gotten to the point where the baby might be sweating, depending on how long the baby cries. The heartbeat starts racing fast. If the baby turns red. The sympathetic nervous system is when the child when the child is dysregulated, and the chemicals that are released during that time of dysregulation. So think cortisol. Okay, so now that we know that the need has been met, so the baby's lid is flipped, we're in distress. 6 o'clock spot. Mama comes, or caregiver comes and feeds that baby and brings comfort, which is the 9 o'clock spot. So that all of this, the parasympathetic nervous system, inhibitory neurotransmitters, this is the calm. The calming chemicals, the comfort. The baby is regulated. The baby is back here. So we lay the baby down. Lila crying again. What does Lila, what's wrong with Lila now? Okay, diaper needs to be changed. So mama, a caregiver come, change Lila diaper. Comforts Lila, talks to her. She's so precious, sweet. Lay her down. She good. We done went through this cycle again. Okay. So those are two things. So how many times a day do you think a baby in the first year of life is fed? How many bottles? Let's just hypothetically, let's just throw it out there.
Well, when you cluster feed, you feed them every 2 hours.
Okay. So 2 hours, so that could be 10 bottles. Yeah, that's a lot of bottles. Okay. So 10 bottles a day times, I mean, that happens every day. I mean, it's not 10, the older they get, they start eating food, but just think, every time the baby cries, a caregiver comes and responds to meet that need, okay? The attachment cycle, this is the attachment cycle, is being formed. The baby is learning those hundreds of thousands of times, because that's just one need, the bottle. There's another need with the diaper being changed. There's multiple needs that are repeatedly addressed on an ongoing basis in the first year of life. Hundreds of thousands of needs. What is happening is, in attachment, trust is being formed. This baby is learning, when I cry, somebody gonna come and take care of me. Self-worth. Because somebody comes, that must mean I matter to somebody. I'm gonna keep crying. As long as they keep coming and meeting my needs. Self-efficacy. My voice matters. It matters that I cry. Someone cares that I cry. Self-regulation. The parent is coming to regulate. The caregiver is coming to regulate that baby. And in this process, what is happening is we're establishing a foundation of mental health. Okay? Mental health is being established in this process. So this is the attachment cycle. So what happens if the attachment cycle is disrupted, you may ask? Let's see. So we're gonna put baby Lila down. Now we have, can y'all name my other baby? Who's this?
Armando.
Armando? Okay, that's cute. So now we have baby Armando. Okay. So what's going on with baby Armando is that he is crying. Okay, and for whatever reason, mama caregiver may come sometime. And it could be no judgment. It could be you don't notice anybody. Everybody's situation is different. It could be maybe mama's busy, or the baby is in the care of a sibling. It can be the person was old school and believed in the cry it out method. It could be a number of things, but the bottom line is the baby has a need, and what's happening is if the need is not met on a consistent basis. Now, I do want to say, because this has come up before, when we're talking about the attachment cycle, the optimal attachment cycle, it's not every time the baby cries. If you don't meet the baby need, something bad is going to happen. I definitely want to explain that. But it's when it's like inconsistent, and it's more often that the need is not being met, that things are happening with the baby, attachment-wise. So
sometimes what they cry is nothing wrong.
So sometimes babies can be colicky. I mean that happens.
So is this just for babies or is it for toddlers too?
So that's a good question. We're actually getting to that. So what happens is the need is expressed, the baby kind of stays in distress, and the need is not met consistently. So just like all of those things were formed in the attachment cycle with trust, self-worth, the voice matters, the foundation for good self-esteem and self-worth, the needs are not being met regularly. Those things are also being impacted. So what does that look like? what could that look like?
It could be time of mind too, not just.
Oh, yeah, it could be yeah, it's just someone addressing the needs consistently. That's the bottom line. It doesn't have to be the biological parent, it could be a foster parent. It's the bottom line is that the need is being met. That's the bottom line. So Armando is crying and he still has needs. Do you think if his need doesn't get met and he stops crying, his need go away? No, he still has the need. So what you see at the bottom of your paper, if you're following along on your sheet, is it says 2 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years, 8 to 10 years. So these are the brain development. This is what happens. These are significant, I guess, brain growth and developments first.
My
So your
son has
brain-
been diagnosed with all those at all those stages.
At all those stages. So it could be a number of things, or it could be mental health. But this is what it can look like at this age, behavior dysregulation. And this is when it stands out from peers. Significant. 4 to 6 years old, it can start to look like ADHD symptoms. Okay. There's a lot of diagnosis of ADHD, but if you ever did the research, if you look at trauma, symptoms of trauma, side by side with the symptoms of ADHD, they mimic one another. So I don't know. Is it ADHD? Is it trauma?
That's when, like, okay, I have bipolar, schizophrenia, and especially anxiety. So that's when I started those symptoms.
Not necessarily, because their mental illness is legitimate, but if you had this, it could definitely influence it, definitely. And if mental illness is genetic, then this may not even have anything, I mean, you never know. But this is what it can look like developmentally at these stages of life. So this is when significant brain growth occurs. So by 8 to 10, it can look like depression, anxiety. By 12 years or older, and everybody develops differently, it can look like bipolar disorder or any type of emotional behavioral disorder. Now, again, this is without intervention. This is without the interventions that we're speaking about today. So, all right, so I am not going to show the video, but y'all have it on your paper just so you can go to it on YouTube. We are almost at a break. So how do we learn to regulate? I just explained the attachment cycle. And when I talked about the baby Lila and baby Armando, what's happening in the attachment cycle is when the baby has a need, the parent is 100% supplying their needs. The parent is externally regulating for that baby. The parent is meeting all of those baby's needs and helping that baby, bringing that calm to the baby. Okay? The parent is I do. That's what they call it. I do, we do, you do. So I do is the external regulation. I'm doing everything for that baby. Co-regulation is when the baby starts to get a little bit older and the baby is able to stay hungry or eat when they want something to eat. They let you know, hey, feed me, and you're able to meet that need. They're expressing a need, you're meeting their need. That's co-regulation because they're able to identify it, that they're feeling what they're feeling, and you're able to help them. You're co-regulating with them. You're modeling and showing them how to regulate. And then eventually, it's you do. Self-regulation is the ability to calm yourself by yourself. Calm yourself by yourself. That's what self-regulation is. Having the ability to calm yourself by yourself. And in the connecting principles, I'm almost about to wrap up connecting. Mindfulness is the first strategy. So we teach strategies of each principle, 3 principles: connecting, empowering, correcting. We're teaching strategies right now from connecting. So being mindful is one of the first strategies. Knowing what you bring to the table. Having that in mind as you enter an interaction with a person, with a child, in any relationship, knowing that how you enter in can directly influence the outcome of that situation. You can go into that situation with old or traditional mindsets, thinking that that child just bad, for example, that child don't know how to act, even though the child, now we know the child has a different brain. You can look at that a little bit differently. So being mindful also helps you to recognize, okay, what are your triggers? What triggers me? Because if you know what your triggers are going into that, or if your child does something that dysregulates you, or if another adult does something that dysregulates you, knowing that and being prepared for how you will respond, because you know that's a trigger. Being mindful is, okay, if I know this is a trigger and I know that it might happen, what am I going to do so I can make sure I stay in control? That's a strategy. Being mindful and being aware of what you're bringing to the table and how it influences that whole experience. If you coming in, if a child has a flipped lid, or an adult, if you're working with adults, if a child has a flipped lid and that child causes you to flip your lid, do y'all think 2 flipped lids can regulate each other? No, 2 flipped lids, it is impossible for 2 flipped lids to regulate. As the adult, it is important for us to be a model for the child. This is a way a child begins to learn. A child cannot know what they've never been taught. That's what that external regulation, co-regulation, and self-regulation. If no one ever took the time to teach them, those gaps in that brain on the left is not going to get filled because they're not learning. They have to, you can't expect the child to know what they've never been taught. So if you never taken the time, or no one took the time, and that's what think about in schools, if no one took the time to teach them, they're not going to know how to sit down and be still and pay attention. It needs to be taught. Its regulation needs to be taught. Just like academically, you don't go into kindergarten expecting a child to read a novel. They have to learn the alphabet. They need to learn sounds. It's the same with emotional and behavioral regulation.
One of those behavioral issues cannot keep them from understanding what you're trying to tell them.
Absolutely.
And for them
And we're going to get into that too. Yes, it's actually on the next slide. But yes, if you have those things, if it's sometimes they can't receive it if they're dysregulated. One thing I didn't mention that I was going to mention, I can mention it now since you're asking.
Once he is regulated, then he's able to.
Yeah, I mean, if he's been taught,
Right.
Yeah, he has to be taught.
Sensory comes in play.
Right, sensory definitely affects things, so we're going to talk about that too. It is almost time for a break. If y'all are, does anyone need a break, a bathroom break? Or if y'all good, we can keep going because we only got until 12. Keep going, everybody all right? Yeah. Okay, you can take a break. So mindfulness is knowing what you bring to the table. And an engagement strategy is what we're getting ready to get into next. Actually, let's all take a break. Let's take a break so everybody can hear the content. Let's be back at 11:15.
Tasha, will you tell them?
11:15.
There's water. You all can have. Thank you. And those bars, breakfast bars. Table. And the mugs are for you to take home when you all leave. That's a thank you to bartending for us. And I'm sorry that it's not cold, the water is cold.
Oh, no.
Thank you.
I'm a subject for my Getting kind of serious. I feel it. I'm always scared of stalkers. I know I get cold cuts.
So when you say epigenetics,
Mhm.
which is most of the time, those are like your phenotypes, right? So it's environmental, like somebody wanted to check their markers. Those necessarily are not gonna come up, like you say, family history,
All of those play into it. I think, I don't know if, like, if you were checking genetic markers, if something would show up,
Mhm.
that says
so it's just
trauma,
like
but I do
verbal.
think you would have similar genetic markers, parent
Yeah.
to child to grandchild,
Mhm.
which could be an indicator of whatever, but those markers will be present.
Okay, which because it's a different variable, those markers can change depending on.
Yes,
Okay.
everything that I'm training today, it can be altered. Everything, that's what TBRI believes, and you can see results through
Okay.
healing relationships.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Definitely.
Okay. Right. Oh, I appreciate it. Okay, so you can have a lot of packets, you could give it out, to the people as they need, you know. That way they can carry home with them and read it and try to understand it and then, then follow up,
What?
Yeah, and I really know you
go
go
to
to some that.
You know it's trauma.
Mhm. Good. Okay. Oh, yeah, because I do take them, I will be there, I am planning on being there on Sundays, and so, what you can do is, you can put them on the very back.
Virtual.
If you go and I'm not there, come on the back
Yeah,
pew,
like,
and we would get them, I love them, you hand them out, and you hand out as they need.
It's almost time.
Oh, so 50.
15.
Oh, you say how many virtually?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, 15.
Oh, no, we
Oh,
had more.
17.
No, we had more than that. Some of
Oh,
them were
yeah,
actually
same.
leaving for the break, so they're probably coming back at 11.
11:15. Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
that's good. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, thank you.
With someone, anyone, board certified behavior analyst. Not as a trainer, but when I was in, when I worked in the school system, we had some coming into the schools. But I was Jefferson. So I really wanted I want to get through and have time for questions at the end.
Yes.
So and you can unmute me.
Okay.
Yes, I'll close out the camera.
Do you want me to close out the camera?
Yeah, so I can see the screen. Because I
Oh.
can't see it behind you either.
There you go.
There you go. All right. So,
See?
oh
See, we
wait,
don't see it?
yeah. Okay. All right. So just to quickly recap, mindfulness is being aware of what you bring to the table and keeping in mind that what you bring to the table can influence the outcome of that interaction with the person, whether it's a child or an adult. So now we're getting ready. This is one of my favorite parts of TBRI, the engagement strategies. The engagement strategies discuss it shows verbal and nonverbal ways to connect with the child in a way that children actually understand and process. So the term we talk about, for example, playful engagement. Welcome back, guys. When we talk about playful engagement, so we're getting ready to talk about engagement strategy. So this is the next strategy. The first one was mindful, being aware of what you're bringing to the table and how it influences the outcome of any interaction, whether it's with a child or an adult. Just knowing what you bring to the table and being aware of what you're bringing to the table and how it can impact you. Next is the engagement piece. So the engagement piece is one of the, I guess, the most interactive, or for me, I love engagement strategies because it speaks the language that kids understand. So this could be nonverbal or verbal. A lot of these are nonverbal. When we talk about playful engagement, that's the one at the very bottom. Playful engagement is one of my favorites. I like playing games. When in our longer trainings, I always do like some type of interactive activity or some form of play. Play disarms fear. So what that means is if you're playing and having fun, you are not in your downstairs brain. You're not here. You're here. So play disarms fear. So if you're playing, child is playing, even if a dysregulated adult is playing, they're in whole brain where you're able to communicate and talk and have fun with them in that state. Play, everybody doesn't have the language of play. Play doesn't come natural for everybody, but there are different ways that you can play that work for you. Again, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, you know yourself best, you know your context best. So the information I'm presenting, you'll be able to apply it in a way that fits you. Behavior matching. Behavior matching is probably one of the easiest strategies that they use. The little things matter with behavior matching. If you have a kid that you're trying to connect with, something as simple, if y'all are getting a snack, getting the same flavor snacks, same flavor snowball, same kind of chips. If you know that they dress a certain way or wear the same colors, match the colors. They notice little things. Behavior matching, if someone, like when I worked in the school system, often children would be brought to be dysregulated or crying or upset, and they would come to my office to calm and talk. I would often, if they needed their space, give them their space, but when I saw that they were back where they could communicate, I would sit down next to them and kind of sit how they were sitting, just looking at them. That communicates. That's a paraverbal is what they call it. It's nonverbal communication, and 93% of communication is paraverbal.
My son has a safe place at school. He can go, get sensory oriented, and his social worker can do what you're saying.
Yeah, that's good. So behavior matching in safe places is awesome. That would be there's a lot of safe places. Some people have them in their home, some people have them at school, where a child can go or calm down, where they can really use it to calm down. Nurturing touch. Everybody's not comfortable with touch. There is different ways that you can offer touch to a child. If it's your own child, you know your child best, but little things that you can do is little things can be connecting. If your child is talking to you, just kind of moving the hair or just looking at them, kind of moving their chin up depending on how little they are. Just sitting close, arm to arm, just letting them just have that sense of touch and closeness. Humans were wired for touch. We're created for connection. We give high fives, we give fist bumps. A lot of time, culturally, sometimes we hug people when we greet them. It's just what we do as humans. Be mindful for those workers who work with people who have a history of inappropriate touch, because touch is probably, until they've healed from that, touch is probably not the best way to try to connect with them. There is something called symbolic touch, where can I practice on you? Okay, so if you're feeling down and I were to kind of hold my hand like this, I'm not, if y'all can see, I'm not actually touching her, but she can have the sensation of, and this is she, let's say Miss Keisha don't like to be touched. So let's say she's a person that's like, don't touch me. And if she's upset and I want to comfort her, this is what's called symbolic touch. I don't know if y'all work with or have children who have, it could be sensory issues or just are not comfortable with touch. Symbolic touch is a way that this actually is giving the same things to the brain that it needs to fill in some of those gaps that we were talking about earlier. Symbolic touch.
Like being constrict, like tight. Like if I squeeze him, just like if I had a weighted blanket, is compression.
Yes. So we're getting to sensory too, but yes, absolutely. Warm eyes. I'm about to start moving through everything fast because I want to save time for questions, but we're going through all the strategies right now. Warm eyes. Has anyone, I would say culturally, a lot of people down south have gotten the look, and they know what the look means. If you got a look from a caregiver, when you doing something that you know you ain't had no business doing, that look communicates a lot of things. Often something that you don't want. But what's communicated to you is that you better stop doing whatever it is that you're doing. So that is not TBRI. Okay. Warm eyes is not looking at people with those eyes like you gonna get it. That's not warm eyes. TBRI, warm eyes. Good, how are you? So warm eyes is looking at a person or a child, even when you know that they did something wrong, looking at them and reflecting preciousness, even though they say, I'm not saying it's easy, but TBRI teaches. You want to always communicate that regardless, yeah, you did something wrong, you done messed up, but I still love you. I still care for you, regardless of what you did. We're gonna get through it. I'm not happy, but my eyes are communicating that I still love you and you're still important to me. You're still special.
I feel like with that, like I've tried that before, and it just gives them, it's like it's giving them the okay to, like, even though they did something bad, you're not in trouble, so do it again.
So it takes practice. TBRI is not an overnight fix.
No, I'm saying like I used to do.
That used to be
me. You're not in trouble. It's okay. And then they do it again.
Yeah, but I think the difference is what you communicate after the warm eyes. In
yeah.
other words, if you're communicating, it's okay. I mean, you can be kind, but yet correcting. You know, what you did wasn't okay. You know, so we're gonna work on it together,
Yeah.
you know.
All right. I'm moving fast, guys. Voice quality. So we talk about voice quality. tone, volume, cadence. When a lid is flipped, this is not the time to be darting out instructions, trying to tell a child or an adult, you need to do this, that's why this happened. This is not the time to do that, because they are not processing anything more than 3 to 5 words at a time, because they can't, because their brains are like, they're not there. So voice quality is important for 2 reasons. One, what you're communicating, keep in mind, when you're communicating when they're here, it has to be short phrases if you're trying to expect them to get it. Voice quality is also important. You ever heard the saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it? You can say the same words, but it can have completely different meanings. You can, for example, I am so glad you're here today. And that seems like I'm excited about that. I'm happy that he's here. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. What does that communicate?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not really glad, like, right, sarcasm, like, you really don't want to be bothered with that person. So it's just being mindful of how you say things and what you say when the lid, and that's regularly, but when the lid is flipped, being mindful not to communicate too much at a time, because they can't process it anyway, and to talk slow, like use slow words, because if you come in, if they're not processing and you coming at them, raising your voice, that is further going to dysregulate them versus, okay, I see you're upset, but give it some time. Give it some time. Just slow, low, calm. And I talk about playful engagement. Moving on, now we're getting ready to get into empowering principles. This is how the environment can affect behavior, okay? And remember, each of the principles have strategies, and each strategy is designed to promote self-regulation. So, physiological strategies address what is going on internally that can ultimately influence behavior and emotional regulation. So physiological strategies can look like hydration, blood sugar, and sensory needs. So by a show of hands, has anyone ever gotten hungry and it began to affect how they act or how they angry? Okay. What about anybody ever been anybody ever fell asleep at a training? Like a meeting or a training, not on purpose, but on accident?
Yes.
Okay, so those are just 2 simple questions, but those directly relate to physiological strategies. This affects what is going on internally and how it influences your behavior and how you act. So hydration, very important. By the time your body feels thirst, this is by the time you're thirsty, you're already about 10% dehydrated, but at 2%, your body has already started to lose some cognitive functioning, where it affects your memory, your ability to receive information. Now, this is all reversible once you get some water, but the important thing is staying hydrated. Staying hydrated doesn't have to be water. Water is better for the brain, but being hydrated helps keep things on track, helps keep you regulated. Children with different brains, it is easier for them to get dysregulated. So these strategies that I'm teaching y'all is a way to stay ahead of the dysregulation. If they get dysregulated easily, if you're making sure that they're hydrated, blood sugar, if they're eating, making sure that they're having protein-rich brain food like granola bars. These are great snacks that are being provided to y'all today. These are healthy. Ideally, any snack will do, but the protein-rich snacks, free and complex carbohydrate snacks, it feeds the brain what it needs, especially if you are dysregulated frequently. Sensory needs are, who knows what the 5 senses are? All right, touch,
Smell, taste,
smell, taste.
visual,
I did.
visual.
Sight and hearing. Okay, so when you think, let me close the camera. All right, so when you think of sensory needs, people often, again, like I mentioned earlier, associate sensory needs with children who have autism, but all of us have sensory needs. Some people, I worked with a number of kids who had sensory needs. There was this kid who had a hearing, well, not a hearing thing, but he would get completely dysregulated when it would rain and like storm outside, and he would literally be a flight risk running around the school. I didn't know what to do with him, but they would always call me to chase after him. But what happened was he would cover his ears, and he was scared of the thunder. And when you cover your ears, you are trying to block out sensory input. So when you're blocking out sensory input, that is called sensory defensive behaviors. Some kids are, if they have tags, some kids are really irritated by tags, so much so that it can affect their behavior and just throw their whole little world off. Having tag-free shirts would be a sense of, because they're clearly agitated by the tag, that could be a sensory defensive behavior. Have you ever been around a child, at one of the schools I worked at, there was a child who constantly would throw stuff up in the air, like all the time, repeatedly, and the teacher would be like, I just need him to stop. And I'm like, well, I didn't know TBRI at the time, but I knew that there was something going on with him, that he needed that repeated motion. He was seeking something. He was trying to regulate himself. He was sensory seeking. When you have those kids that get up and move around a whole lot in the classroom, that is, they can't sit still. It's not always ADHD. They're seeking sensory input. They need something to keep them kind of occupied so they can regulate themselves. That's sensory seeking behaviors. Sorry, I gotta rush through all of this, but are y'all learning something?
Like my son uses fidgets.
Yes,
And
that is,
so he doesn't run out.
so that is a strategy. I'm glad that you said that. So fidgets are a strategy to use. You mentioned the weighted blankets. For those kids who struggle keeping still, the pressure helps calm them.
Well, when he was 3, he couldn't handle loud noises. They would dysregulate him, as well as bright flashing light.
Yes, so if the kid does that, they are trying to, it's their eyes. So all of those things that she's mentioning, that can directly influence behavior. That can change how a child, that can quickly dysregulate a child if their sensory needs are off. So this is why we teach. This is very, very important to keep those things in mind. These are things that people don't often think about when they're dealing with these behaviors. And TBRI calls to consider all of these factors, all of these needs behind the behavior. And it was one other thing you said that I wanted to say it about, but it'll come to me. Okay, so now we're going to look at environmental strategies. Ecological strategies is how things within the environment influences behavior. What is going on in the environment, how that influences the behavior. So think about temperature of the room. If somebody's too cold or too hot, sometimes it's very difficult to focus. If you're too cold or too hot, sometimes if you're spinning around, I feel like if you're like on a ride or something, some people can't do rides like that because it influences how they feel and think. It kind of throws things off. Remember that if something happened early in life that altered the developmental trajectory of the brain, your senses and the way you process and receive information, including balance, can also be influenced. All of this, guys, we go deeper into this in the 6-hour or the full day training. Y'all are getting a very, very condensed version of this. Scaffolding, talked about this earlier. We cannot, you can't expect the child to know what they've never been taught, okay? Just like we build on academic learning, we do the same thing with emotional learning. Remember, I do, we do, you do. That's in everything with behavior and emotional learning. Why do I keep touching this? Okay, I'm so used to training from my laptop. Daily rituals. Rituals is a fun way that, an environmental way that you can externally connect with the child. And people often confuse rituals with routines. Rituals are different from routines. Routine is just something to help you stay on track and know what to expect and what you need to do next, like a morning routine. Get up, brush your teeth, wash your face, make your hair. Ritual is, the whole purpose of a ritual is the intent of connection. A simple thing that people often do these days is they do like the handshake, where like if you greet somebody, especially kids like the little handshakes. I was at a Rivard detention center doing something with the girls there, and the girls got up and did something. And I'm like, wait, do that again? I'm like, oh, Earth, like it's a whole little complex system that they do, but that was a way that they could.
I kiss my kids good morning.
That's a connection. That's a ritual. Do they expect that? Do they know that that's what's going to happen before they leave to go to school or whatever? That's a ritual. Reading a story at bedtime is a ritual. Eat dinner, playing games at dinner, just having conversations at dinner. That can be something that the family or you and your child, or you can have rituals as a caseworker who works with their clients. Like, it's all about connection. You can get a lot further when you connect with the person than not. Transitions are an opportunity for adults to provide extra support. Children with different brains, adults with different brains have a hard time moving from one activity to the next. Have you ever tried to get a child off of a video game? Yeah, it can be a challenge because they're not ready. A simple way that you can help them, this is a strategy, is what they call transition warning. That's given like, hey, in about 10 minutes, we're gonna have to go and take care of this. So you're gonna have to take it back. All right, we got about 5 more minutes. So this helps them mentally prepare rather than abruptly taking them off the game that their minds are fixed on and then instantly dysregulate them.
Yeah,
You have to prepare for
transitioning.
Yeah. Yes. So all of these would work for your child, clearly. Being a detective, this is simply explaining how you can recognize when things are off. So if you know that every time, an example, I'll just give a quick example for the sake of time. There was a kid at a school. Every Tuesday they wore a certain shirt, and every Tuesday he would act up. But they never made the connection until someone took the time and saw, okay, I noticed on Tuesdays, this is when the behaviors are out the box. And I considered the sensory preferences, like what could be going on sensory wise with the child, whether it's internal or external. And then I looked at, okay, I know he wear this red shirt every Tuesday and he acting out, maybe the shirt has a tag in it, or that was actually a true story that actually completely changed the behavior. And on Tuesdays, the behavior started to improve just by a simple tagless shirt. That's being proactive and noticing patterns and actually doing something about it. Being proactive is trying to figure it out before it gets out of hand. All right, now we're getting to proactive strategies and correcting. So this is the correcting principles. Proactive strategies are what we can do in correcting before behaviors get out of hand, while responsive is how to respond when the behaviors do get out of hand. So in being proactive, choices is something that people look at and be like, choices? Why is that on the list? Choices are on this list of strategies because they offer appropriate control. But a lot of people think, okay, I'm in control. I'm the adult. I'm the one who needs to be telling him what to do, and he needs to listen, or she. The idea behind giving these choices is that always the adult is still in charge. Usually when the child gets dysregulated, it's because they feel powerless. Often when I get upset about something, it's because I feel something was out of my control. I mean, we all can pretty much relate to that, right? So when you're given choices, there's actually a strategy to giving choices. You don't just give two choices. There's, in the TBRI model example, your choices, it should only be two choices. It can't be anything more than two, because too much is too much. Two choices. Use a visual example. You could do this, or you could do this. You could do this, or you could do this. Two choices. And when you're making the choices, you're making sure that there is no right or wrong answer. So it has to be an outcome that you both are okay with. It can't be, you're gonna do this or you're going to your room. That's not two good choices. That's a right and a wrong answer. It can't be, you don't want to eat this, you're not eating. That's not the choices, because that's the old school. That's the traditional way. Some of us were raised, go to bed hungry. No, that's not choices, okay? Not, y'all can give those choices, but that's not TBRI. Just want y'all to be clear when y'all giving choices. That is not the TBRI way. So the whole idea is to offer choices. You want to give choices because this is a strategy that helps, again, fill in those gaps that they didn't get when early in life, when that attachment cycle was disrupted. This is a simple way to fill in gaps, fill in those spaces. Purposely find reasons to give choices. You want to use this fork or this fork? Something so simple. You're empowering the child, you're giving them a voice, letting them know that their voice matters and that their voice is important. The whole idea is to keep things on track or get things back on track. So you do not, at all costs, if you can avoid or prevent a child from flipping their lid, that's what you want to do, because it is a lot easier to deal with the child in a regulated state while you're still regulated than it is to deal with them when their lid is flipped. It's a whole lot easier. So proactive is preventative. You are trying to keep the train moving. You're trying to keep things on track. Sometimes not being mindful and not knowing what you bring to the table and having a mindset that I'm the adult, they're gonna listen to me, that can sometimes cause things to go in a completely different direction. And something that could have been resolved in a matter of two choices has turned into 2 hours of dysregulation or arguing and escalations. And that's a TBRI calls you to be mindful. So let's practice. I'm only going to do one example because we got one more section. Daniel is reading. Let's see, I'll pull it up on here because I can't see it. All right. So Daniel is reading. Oh no, you're fine. You can keep it like that. This was blocking it. All right, Daniel is reading his favorite graphic novel after dinner, and it is almost time for bed. Daniel's mom goes to him, getting down on his level, behavior matching, and asking for his eyes, warm eyes, and gives the following choice. Daniel, you can read for 15 more minutes and then take your shower, or you can shower now and then read for 15 minutes before bed. Which do you choose? So, is this an appropriate use of choices? Is that two choices?
Yes.
Is that two good choices that both can live with?
Yes.
Okay, so that is an appropriate use of choice. So Daniel chooses to read for 15 more minutes because he is really enjoying his novel. Simple example. We have more. Y'all can actually look at them. It's in your handout. You can look at the other examples. But what would be? Can someone quickly give me an example of what would not be a good choice, a good use of choice in that situation? What if mom? What's in the? Yeah, that would not be a good choice because that's not two things that they both can live with. Mom could live with that, but he can't. You want to give some appropriate control.
Reader, I'm gonna take away your PlayStation.
Yeah, that's not a good choice because you're forcing him to do something that he doesn't want to do. But when you can give him some level of control, that helps keep the bus moving, helps keep things from getting dysregulated, and he feels that, guys, so important. You want to teach your children to have a voice. You want to teach them to make decisions for themselves. Like if you're not, if it's always you making the choice and you telling them what to do, are they learning? Right. I grew up in a house where I didn't get a lot of choices. So I struggle as an adult making decisions for myself right now. So it's real. Like you want to be able to model these things for your children or for the people that you're working with, even adults. There are adults who are these children who never got intervention that you're probably working with right now. And without that intervention, they're still the same kids that never got their needs met. But you have an opportunity as a person who's been trained and know what you're working with to be able to go and fill in some of these gaps in simple ways. If they get it from you and don't get it from nobody else, they're getting something. So keep that in mind. Skip all these slides. Okay, so how often do we give choices that we don't agree with, that we don't want? A lot of times, I know when I'm at a restaurant, if they have something on the menu that I am not feeling, I'm like, okay, well, can you change it? Like, can I get something different? Can you not put this on it? Or can I get this on the side? Like, I do that a lot. Yeah, I mean, that is a compromise. When I don't like the choices that I've been given, we as adults, we compromise. This is another life skill that we want to teach our children to be able to make. We want to teach them how to compromise so they can say, okay, they can know, okay, if I'm at work and someone says something that I don't want to do, I'm gonna quit. You want your child to just quit? No, they need to learn. You have to work to make a living. You can't quit every job you get. They need to learn to deal with stuff. They need to learn to function in society. And these are simple ways you can do that. But when those gaps are not filled in, they flip their lid. They're very difficult to deal with because nobody took the time to show them how to do that, you know, how to make decisions, how to when they're not when something is going on that they don't agree with, or even as far as being in relationships. If you have a boundary, you want to be able to say, hey, respect my boundary. I'm not comfortable with this. If you don't give choices or allow compromise, you're depriving them from the ability to make decisions when they need to know how to make decisions in real life situations. So it teaches children negotiation, teaches them how to negotiate their needs. It teaches them social skills, and it teaches them that their words have power. And again, compromise teaches them, okay, if you don't like the choices, what else? You can say, you can ask for a compromise. So what, in Daniel's case, if he wanted to, he was like, okay, well, how about I take a quick shower and I read that? A compromise would be, and I can read for 20 minutes instead of 15. That's an easy yes. That doesn't affect anybody. He's still taking a shower. And you got to think about it. Is it really that serious? Like at the end of the day, is it hurting anybody if, as long as he's still going to bed at the same time, he's still getting to read his book, he's still clean. Bottom line is the bottom line. Whew. Yeah, I'm rushing. All right. Sharing power. Sharing power can be counterintuitive. But again, people don't realize the parent is still in charge. The parent is giving the choices. The parent is making the choices and presenting them to it, but the child is taking those choices. The child is practicing decision-making skills, and the child or the adult, because again, the children who didn't get their needs met become adults without intervention who still are struggling with the same things. These children learn that, say, people listen to me, I have a voice. These adults learn that my voice matters, and someone actually took the time. And then they could also model to their own children when someone takes the time with them as the adults. All right, you can hit close. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right, so last, guys, the ideal response. So the ideal response is a strategy that TRBI uses when things get off track, when a child is dysregulated. What they say to avoid that this is what you should follow. You want to be immediate. Being immediate means responding within 5 seconds of the situation happening. It's going direct, being direct, going straight to the person. Now, has anyone ever, my sister, she'll tell my niece, I'm gonna tell your daddy when he get home, and that's not being immediate, because when the daddy get home, the daddy come home and she done forgot what she done did, and it's completely ineffective after the fact. Like, you have to address it in the moment. It is very necessary to address the situations in the moment, because waiting, especially with a child with a different brain, their mind is so far gone past that it moved light years
You
beyond
didn't make
that.
that connection.
Yes.
Between what they did and what you're doing.
They have an inability to, because their brains don't have all of those connections. Direct. I'm guilty of this, or used to be guilty of this. Yelling from another room. Stop. Like, y'all chill out, or something like that. You need to go to the person. If you're trying to address it, they need to see you. You need to be direct. You need to address it in the moment. That can make the difference with how quickly something ends. Yeah. Efficient. Efficient, the E is efficient, is applying the amount of correction that's appropriate for the situation. Dr. Purvis, which is one of the founders of TBRI, there's 2 of them. Dr. Purvis has a saying where she says, don't go after a gnat with an elephant gun. So if the situation is minor, even though it's inconvenient, respond in a minor way. Don't blow up for something that could be addressed here. Save the blow ups for the bigger things. Like, if you're addressing the situation, it has to be appropriate for the situation. Otherwise, children become desensitized to, if you always overreact. It's like, you're gonna overreact if I do this, you're gonna overreact if I do that. Like, okay, so it doesn't matter. No matter what I do, you're gonna overreact. So it begins to not have any impact.
And that's why it's so important for the adult to be regulated.
Yeah, so important and mindful of what they're bringing to the table, because this directly influences. Action-based. Being action-based means following through with what you say. You want to, if someone is, if you say you're gonna do something, do it. But if a child is, has done something wrong, and it speaks to, I want to say it was you who asked the question. If a child has done something wrong and you address it, they're dysregulated, and then they calm down, give it some time. You want them, if they're young, to do a redo. Action-based is a redo, meaning, okay, let's try that again. Let's do this over again. If you did something because you acted a certain way, what would be the best way to do it? Show me how you would do that next time if this happened again. With the older kid, they wouldn't do this. It wouldn't be the same thing. They may feel insulted if you ask them to do a movie. But with the older kid, what you can do is talk about it. So now that you've had some time to calm down, how would you respond if this were to happen again? And have them verbalize a verbal redo. Tell them what you would do or how you would do it next. Leveled at the behavior, not the child. A lot of people be like, that kid bad. Like, it's always, oh, here they come. Like, they think about those people, and they associate who they are with their behavior. I know I, as a human, as an individual, do not want to be defined by something that I've done in the past. Like, I don't want that to define who I am. I am not my behavior back then. I made mistakes. We all make mistakes. I want to be able to move on from those behaviors so that we can move forward. You don't keep bringing it up. You once you address it, you move on. Like, and you don't hold it against them.
You don't label them.
It don't. That's what
bad.
that is. Leveled at the behavior, not the child. You talk about the behavior,
Right.
not that you're not labeling them by that behavior. Very good. You get it. So, lastly, 3 minutes, guys. Lastly, is levels of response. The E in efficient, giving the appropriate response for the situation, that's where this comes in. This is all TBRI trademarked, but playful engagement is the first level. If you are responding in a way, if they're being, let's say they roll their eyes or they're being flipped, be like, oh, what's going on with your eyes? Something playful. Or they don't want to take the trash out. You know it's your day to take the trash out. You start out playful, letting them know, okay, we good. Like, I know, just what you're supposed to do, but you keep it, the idea is to keep it going. Structured engagement. Let's say it's time to take out the trash and they're like, I'm not taking the trash out. I don't want to. Like, okay, structured it up means you got two choices. You could take the trash out now, or you can take the trash out after dinner. The trash needs to go out. Okay. Then they make the decision. Then you move all the way back to being playful, and then move on. You don't hold on. You don't bring it up. I'm talking about you not taking it. That you don't do that. You keep the train moving. Let's say they don't make a choice. They're like, I'm not taking that trash out. I don't want to. I'm not doing it. And then they start cursing or flipping chairs or something. That's calming engagement. At the calming engagement piece, you are not at the point where you're trying to give them choices or talk to them. They're here now. If you have to get here where you're trying to calm them, they're here. Okay. The goal when they're here at a level 3 is calm. The first playful structure, that's what you model, calm. So your goal here is to regulate them, because if they're dysregulated, you need to bring the calm. Okay. The goal is not getting the trash taken out at this point. You focus on that later. The goal is keeping them calm, because you're not getting nothing done by going back and forth with them. You can't regulate with 2 flips heads.
You gotta give them some space at that time.
You got to give them some space or help them regulate. Like if okay, all right, what do you need? Let me get you something to drink, some water. Because they're calm. What's going on? You had a bad day today? Something to help them calm down. Because you can't.
When you said
Yeah.
to calm down.
Right, you probably just regulated too. But the whole idea is to not keep forcing them to take the trash out at this point, because they're not at the place where they can focus on it. And again, always, always, always return to playful engagement, because that lets them know that we good. We keeping that train moving. We keeping things on track. We good. So protective engagement, TBRI does not have a protective engagement instruction. Usually, if you have to get to the point of protective engagement, if you're at an agency, you usually follow the agency's protocol. This is when violence has become like where they get so dysregulated they can't calm themselves, or you can't calm them. You need intervention at this point. So TBRI does not subscribe to any specific protective engagement, but what they always subscribe to is, as soon as possible, always return to playful engagement, because that lets them know we didn't seal that loop and we good, we okay, and everything's gonna be okay. Keep in mind, when it's over, it's over. Don't bring it up. It's always very important to stay connected to the child at all times, even when they're dysregulated, because they know that you're connected with them. That helps. That's all that matters in that moment. And always, always, always return to playful engagement. It is time for questions. Questions in the chat, questions in person. If y'all have any questions, please feel free. And while y'all are thinking of questions,
Everyone that's attending virtually, your mics is unmuted and you do have control of the mics.
while y'all are thinking of questions, I definitely want to highlight, again, this is a very condensed version of a condensed version. We typically do a full day TBRI training intro, and we have a 2-day TBRI intro coming to Baton Rouge, December 5th and 6th. 2 full days. You get CEUs if you need them. If you need parenting classes, you get certificates for parenting, and for any foster parents can get what they need, the hours needed for attending. December 5th and 6th. It's in Baton Rouge. It is live on our website. We are still working out the location. But if you go to crossroadsla.org, crossroadsla.org, and click TBRI in-person training, you will see the Baton Rouge training, and you can register on the site. The registration is open, and right now we are in the early registration phase. Foster parents and foster parents they get in free, and DCFS pay a discounted rate. So any questions? Does anyone have any questions for me?
So does TBRI offer counseling services?
So we don't offer counseling services. We don't.
What's the,
So interventions is what, and we lots of training,
okay,
and we do coaching for organizations. We do some classes with parents.
he went through art. Do you know who art is?
I don't. I'm not familiar. I'm probably going to learn about them in December, because usually we meet a lot of organizations when we do the 2-day workshops.
Yeah, so they're hearing that they did kind of a intervention when he was in early steps. They would go to the daycare and actually teach the teacher how to, they were in.
How to work with the, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's very important and needed,
Yeah.
especially so they can be successful. Otherwise, without that extra support, if you have behaviors, sometimes teachers don't know how to handle it. So that's excellent.
Someone want you to redo the symbolic touch. They didn't get a chance to see it.
Oh, okay. So can you face it towards you?
Okay.
Here we go. Okay, so this, wait, let me see.
Can you see?
This
Can you
way.
see? Okay.
Can I see? Okay,
All right.
yeah. Okay. This would be symbolic touch, but it would be on the back, like around the back where, let me see. Let me just hold, I'm gonna hold it. This is symbolic touch. So I'm not actually touching. I'm just kind of giving the sensation of touching, and the brain is processing it in the same way as if I was touching them. Thank y'all for coming. Don't forget your mug.
Oh, don't forget.
Don't forget your mug. Thank you. More questions in the chat?
They still didn't see it. Okay.
Oh, they didn't see it?
You can't see it?
You didn't see it?
I saw it, thank you.
They can't see it?
I saw it
Okay,
when you.
okay, this is
Okay.
perfect. This is
Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
All right, can they see? Can y'all see now?
Yes.
Can y'all type? Yes, y'all can see?
Yes.
Me. Okay, one more person say they can't see.
Okay, can they see? All right. Symbolic touch. Let's say the child or adult is upset. You're trying to calm them, but they don't like touch. Symbolic touch is after talking to them, you're giving the sensation, or you're going in like you're gonna hug them, but you're not actually hugging them. You're just kind of holding the hand near them, and the brain again is processing this in the same way as if you actually were touching them and hugging them. That's called symbolic touch, and it could be done in different ways. You can do like, I'll do a little like a chin symbolic touch, hair symbolic touch. You're not actually touching it.
I had a quick comment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is that comment?
How come we can't hear them?
Yeah, I am.
It's about
everybody. It's on. What is your comment? Thank you so much for coming.
You can type it. You can type the comment if it helps.
Well, my comment is, thank you so much. This
Oh, I
was
can hear.
Oh,
very-
here you go.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Say that again.
Just wanted to say thank you so much. This was very, very helpful and just really a blessing. So I wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad that you found it helpful. You should
Thanks.
check out the 2-day. The 2-day is going to be definitely way more more intense. It's a lot more information and comments and a lot more activities and more interactive. I definitely recommend the 2 days.
Okay, thank you so much. You have a blessed
You're
blessed
welcome.
week.
You're most welcome.
Bye-bye.
Very good information. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And we had another comment. It has really changed her cerebral cortex and her way of thinking.
Oh, great. Yes, that's called a mindset shift. I'm so happy that the information resonated.
I had a child acquire a traumatic head injury at school. Okay, and it really has changed her cerebral cortex
Okay.
and her way of thinking.
Yes, so healing is possible. Definitely with traumatic brain injury, you want to make sure you're getting following through with all of the medical interventions that the doctor suggests. But I highly recommend the healing methods of TBRI as well.
I think that's the last.
That's the last one?
Yes, ma'am. Great information. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for attending Trauma Informed Care. I really appreciate you joining us.